Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Creating Synergy podcast. I'm thrilled today to introduce our guest, Connor O'Rourke, a returning alumni on the Creating Synergy podcast and also a very, very good friend of mine. Not only is he the co-founder and director of Nuago, but he's also been recognised as the 2023 South Australian Entrepreneur of the Year at the InDaily 40 Under 40 Awards. In our previous discussions, we discussed all things sales. And this time, Connor shares his journey as an entrepreneur and building Nuago in a $20+ million business with over 60 staff, and the lessons that he's learned along the way. We discussed the role that leadership plays in embracing ambiguity and how we can apply the skill set in being consistently comfortable in discomfort. Connor also opens up about his experience with Imposter Syndrome and the significance that validation plays in the entrepreneurial journey and the emphasis that he puts on focusing on the company values for business success. So without further ado, let's dive into our conversation with Connor O'Rourke. Welcome back to the Creating Synergy podcast. Today we have a remarkable human being, a very, very dear friend of mine, Connor O'Rourke. Welcome to the show, mate.
Great to be back, buddy.
I looked back because you're obviously a two-time person now on this podcast.
I'm one of the lucky ones, yeah.
One of the lucky ones. January 27th, 2021 was when we released that podcast.
Yeah, right.
I reckon we recorded it late 2020. That's how long ago. It feels like forever ago.
That does seem like an age ago, really. Have we only met each other shortly before that?
Yeah, it wasn't much before that. So that I think since then, I would say you have played a massive role in my life since then, and especially over the past couple of years. Confided in you, sought your advice almost on a weekly basis. I think our wives are questioning who we speak to more.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So it's really been around just, I think we've developed this relationship on what is the sport of entrepreneurship, isn't it, really? So I just wanted to start off the conversation by saying thanks.
Oh, likewise, man. I'm touched. It's really a privilege. I think I said to you before, I'm got nervous going, it's starstruck being around, the journey that you've been on as well. And certainly having, someone to confide in, to bounce ideas off of, however crazy they might be sometimes, to help ground you or to help, push you along and spur you along. So the feeling is absolutely mutual, mate.
So you're riding a bit of a wave at the moment, which is an exciting one at that. The incredible achievement of being named the South Australian Entrepreneur, can't get my words right, the South Australian Entrepreneur of the Year award for the InDaily 40 Under 40. So congrats, mate. How did it feel being recognised in that way?
I don't know if I still necessarily believe it's real. It's a lovely accolade to get, but I think is a reflection on the wonderful people I get to work with every day, and the customers that we get to serve and those sort of things. So whilst it's a thing I get to stand up there and accept the award for it, I think it'd be remiss of me to not really kind of throw praise to all the people that make it happen in that regard.
Yeah.
So really, I've tried to just embrace it. Try to be in the moment a little bit with it and go, these things don't, last forever. People's memories are short, and it just, I think, a little bit of validation that, from an entrepreneur standpoint, if I can use that word, it's a tough journey in those things, and you do need, I think, little validations on the way and to celebrate those things. And it's been awesome though, very unexpected, but certainly, trying to sit with it and enjoy it.
Absolutely. There's a few standard cliche answers in that, but we won't go into.
No, I think they're genuinely true, right?
I'm stirring.
Who am I?
What does to be awarded Entrepreneur of the Year is obviously like you said, very humbling. But what does entrepreneurship mean to you? I mean, I said earlier, it's a sport almost in its own right. What does it mean to you?
I think it can probably have a lot of different definitions. For me, I think it's about being comfortable in discomfort, I think. It's almost kind of that, it's like a personality archetype that I think that you need to have, that it's okay to sit in ambiguity and to not always have that level of certainty. Yeah. I went to a Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within thing. He talked about, those fundamental core things that we need is certainty and variety. And I think, entrepreneurialism, if I can say that as a word, has a lot of variety in it. And I've always kind of lived in my life in a lot of variety with, ever since being a little kid, from moving around a ton and, having a dad that had businesses that he worked for all over the state of California and then to Texas before ultimately landing me in Australia. So
during your speech on the award, I'm going to harp on this award for a while, all right? So just before we get into
there
the
was
story.
A few champagnes had before
there,
the speech.
There was. But during your
those.
speech, you alluded to imposter syndrome and how you were suffering from it as you were up on stage being awarded that. As a sufferer of imposter syndrome myself, I was somewhat surprised to hear you say that. I know a lot about you, but I was somewhat surprised to hear you say that because you have this remarkable confidence, I think, about you. And so, I'm keen to explore what imposter syndrome means to you and why you felt that in that situation when you have been remarkably successful.
Oh, firstly, thank you. I think I even felt it this morning, walking in here to have the podcast. Am I confident? Yeah, I am a confident human being, but I think, the brain is a complicated thing. And at times, we all go through varying degrees of belief, because I think imposter syndrome comes down a lot to belief and whether you're fully believing in something or not at a point in time. And so I was going, what do I say? And that walk between my chair and getting to the podium, I'm like, well, what do you say? I was like, whatever, just sit out there and look at the crowd and just see what comes to you in that moment. And for whatever reason, I said, I think that's the first thing I said was, you ever feel like an imposter? Yeah. Because I think everybody that I've talked to, I try to surround myself with a lot of lovely people like yourself and, bounce the ideas around to get a better perspective from those that might not be in my direct line of, business in terms of what we do as a company. And I think in that process, I've had numerous conversations with people about, that self-belief thing going into something new, whether it's, they've got to go give a public speech to the company about something or it's just an unfamiliar territory for them. You can be like, oh, I haven't done this before, but I mean, everybody that's gotten to some level of quote unquote success in their life has probably had that series of emotions. That's just a natural, I think, human concept. And I really like relating the humanness of being a business person. I think there used to be this, very prim and proper perspective of it, but people want to work with people. That's going to continuously be more important as things like AI proliferate and those sort of things that do take away some of the, more base level skills that we might not enjoy doing. That's what I try to think about with that stuff is, how can I help augment some of the stuff that I don't like? But I think the human aspect becomes even more important through that process. So to answer your question around being an imposter, I just think we all kind of
I think
feel it at times.
You alluded to it earlier when you said living with the ambiguity. I think stepping in, as I was listening to you then, you're stepping into situations that you're uncomfortable all the time. Yeah. And you're often going to question yourself, like, why am I here? Like, why would anyone want to listen to me? It doesn't make sense. Oh, yeah. And but they do. And I think it's funny that being in the crowd when you were awarded that and I was listening in, I think it's so funny. It was I know you so well, but did not expect those words to come out of your mouth. I don't know why. I know you suffer from it, but I just it was a nice vulnerability touch. So kudos onto that. Your speech was good. It really, I think, it had everyone in the room laughing and smiling. You made mention to Victoria, was it, or Victoria?
Yeah, I might have had a little stab at the people out east.
Which was really good. And I think that caught the ear of a certain individual. You walked back to your table And there was a human being there waiting for an autograph, I think. Can you explain who that might be?
You're very silly, man. No, so I got back to my table, and the Honorable Premier Malinowskis was standing there at the table. I think he was heading out from. He had given a speech earlier in the evening, as you saw, and was heading out. And I think it walked up to my wife, Megan, while I was on stage, and said, "Oh, is that your husband up there?" And she said, "Yeah." And then I think he hung around and just handed me his business card at the end and said, "Hey, I enjoyed what you said. Perhaps we can continue a conversation." So
beautiful, shaping the state, mate. Shaping the state. Well done.
Thank you.
So, for those who haven't picked it, and I think you have alluded to it already, there is a slight twang in your accent, and so for us to understand who this perfect specimen is sitting in front of me right now, what do we need to know about your earliest context?
I'm so concerned if what I am is perfect. My earliest context. So I'm youngest of 3 kids.
Yep.
I've got an older brother, Brennan, who's 5 years older than me. He's my business partner as well. My sister, Cammie, she's a couple years older than me, and her husband have a vet practice. We all grew up kind of as the kind of support network for each other because we did move around a lot. So my old man went to school in Northern California at a school called Stanford there, and then started working for Exxon in Alaska as a drilling engineer, and then went back to get his master's in business at Stanford, and then like everybody at that point in time was getting hired into Silicon Valley because that was when the kind of boom started happening around there.
So just to jump in, for those who don't know, Mick O'Rourke is your old man who has been on this.
Shout to Pops.
Hey, g'day, Mick. Hope you're well. He's been on the show a couple of times, once as an individual and then once as on my 100 podcast.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
I love your old man. So keep going, but I just wanted to shout out. If you want to learn a little bit more about this human being, we've got a couple of episodes.
Yeah. So he's, my dad's been one of my best mates, my mentor and stuff in life. So he's been certainly pivotal, and I'll definitely have to talk about that as part of my journey. So we moved around with different jobs that he had. I was born in San Diego in Southern California, down by the border of Mexico. At that point in time, he and my mom both were working professional jobs. My mom was in medical sales, crushing it, and Dad was in the Silicon Valley kind of tech sort of scene and worked for different businesses there. So we moved around with the needs of what was happening kind of in jobs at those. So was used to being able to change houses and schools and, friendship groups and sport and all that sort of stuff. But my siblings were always around, so we were, as tight-knit, I think, as you can be. As siblings growing up, we moved to Austin, Texas in 94. And during that time, spent a couple of years there. Loved it. Austin was a really cool city. And then Mom and Dad were saying, we're going to go visit some friends down in Australia. And at that time, they lived in Melbourne and Sydney, and they'd started these little IT print reseller businesses that Hewlett-Packard, you could only sell through the one distributor per state at that point in time. And they said, you should go over and check out this place in Adelaide. I think it was 12 The Parade at Norwood. There's a guy there that wants to sell the franchise, if you will. I don't know if it's exactly a franchise, but sell the license for the region. And so they said, all right, well, while we're here, we'll go check it out. We hear there's tremendous wine over there. So they came, checked it out, and then came back to the States. While we were in Iowa with my grandfather, my pop, and my dad's dad, ex-military man, staying out with him in the middle of some cornfields while they were in Australia. But they came back and said, we're moving to Australia, and that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
And they said, we want to
How old were you at this stage?
I would have been 9 years old.
Yeah, okay.
And they said, we're going to move to Australia and do a 5-year kind of cultural experience for you. You'll get to know a lot about it. And it was terrifying at that point in time, but we packed up and left. My dad came out a couple months earlier than.
Were you I talk to my kids about I kind of almost threaten them sometimes. Like, I'm going to pull you out of a school. They're in a private school. Pull you out of private school, send you to public school. You're wasting my money, all the above. And they almost cry at the idea of moving away from their friends. How were you as a 9-year-old being split from your friendship groups?
It was tough, but at the same time, I think I was used to it. That, we'd moved around so commonly, and typically at that age, it's either through sport or through school that you're hanging out with people. So, I kind of always had some level of sport and stuff. So I'd meet people relatively quickly wherever we relocated.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I remember pretty sad. I think I hadn't finished year 3 yet, so I got pulled out of school a little bit before that. We moved here in May of '96, I think, and then I went into like middle of year 4, I think.
Okay.
At a school here, so I skipped a little bit of time. So trying to make up on that, and get to know. Whilst everything on the surface looks like, oh, Australia and America, they're super similar. It's like about the only thing that's similar is you speak the same language.
Yeah.
And so
everything else just comes in a packet over there, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. It's delivered to your door within 1 hour by Amazon Prime. So it was quite a shock coming over here. Yeah. I love Australia. Obviously, I live here now. I've got 2 children, the third on the way to live here. But it was a big period of adjustment coming over here.
So you land here in Australia, and obviously the influence of your old man and your family, the tight knit group that you are, an entrepreneurial mindset starts kicking in, and you start building PCs. Is that around that early time, or was that a bit later in life?
No, that was absolutely around then. Because he bought the print resale business, and they moved into selling computers and servers and those sort of things at a point in time. And so they had a configuration room, and they had a warehouse. And so learning the kind of process in the warehouse of how to do the pre-configuration exercises before they go to customers and put the asset tag and little stickers and all these sort of things on it, just kind of taught me those sort of skills. At each level of the business, I got to get exposure to kind of different functions of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you reckon that's played out in your life, just having that experience early in that business?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about whether that directly had an influence, but yeah, I think we're just an amalgam of all the things that have happened to us in our life, right? So
now, there's a story that you've told me that I absolutely love, and I would love for you to share it on here. It's the story of Mount Kilimanjaro and how you said it played an absolute pivotal part in your development and thinking as a young man. So I'd be keen to for you to share that story if you could.
Yeah, sure. Kilimanjaro. So in 2003, I can't believe that's 20 years ago.
So can you also explain the enormity of Mount Kilimanjaro, if you could, too, for those who might not know?
Oh, in terms of like what is a mountain?
Yeah. Well, the size,
sure. So Mount Kilimanjaro is on the border of Kenya and Tanzania in Africa as a volcano.
Yep.
Previously, it's the highest peak in Africa, so it's one of the 7 summits of the world.
Yep.
5,895 meters, I think.
Yeah. Wow.
Give or take a meter or two.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's a phenomenal thing where remember when we were climbing it, you couldn't see the summit for several days because of the cloud cover and those sort of things. And you start climbing in a rainforest, and you end up on a glacier at the top, and you go through 4 or 5 or 6 different climates the whole way up. And you get above the tree line, and there's no vegetation and these sort of things, and you're climbing on shale and volcanic kind of interesting surfaces and whatnot. And there's a couple different ways that you can go up the mountain, but the reason we did it is that I think my dad had just exited the business, or was about to, that he had previously. I might have got that wrong, but I think it was around that time. And he said, I want to do something difficult with my sons before I get too old to be able to do it.
But difficult enough that it was still safe, or?
Yeah. We're not talking 8,000 plus, oxygen requirement zones like you get in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
But, it was a great formative experience for me. So there's 2 different ways you can climb, or several different ways, but the 2 kind of routes they talk about colloquially are the Coca-Cola and the whiskey route. So that's like, well, we're going to do the whiskey route. I'm a 16-year-old boy. I'm like, there's going to be whiskey now. And so we started training for it because you got to get pack fit and those sort of things. So we lived in the Adelaide Hills, and we'd hike from our place there to the top of Lofty down to Brown Hill Creek, back up and home with packs on a couple times a week to just start to get the training in and those sort of things. And so then we went out to Africa, got settled in a little town of Arusha, outside of Mount Kilimanjaro area, and then met my dad's best buddy from the state, and their son came over and met us there to do it together. And then, we set about getting, it's 4 days to the summit. So you go from 0 to nearly 6,000 meters in 4 days. So it's pretty heavy on the lungs and on the brain a little bit.
Especially for a 16-year-old.
Yeah. I'm glad I did it then because I think it taught me a little bit more resilience. You think you're a bit unstoppable when you're a young person. So that was, first few days were not too bad. You're flying along, oxygen's pretty good. We were reasonably fit. But nothing can prepare you probably for altitude. So I think the end of the third day, we got into Barafu, which is the final camp you hit before you summit. And it was probably like 6 o'clock at night. You do, I think, 12 to 15 Ks a day, something like that, of hiking. And we got the camp all set up, and it's on shale, which is like this really thin, you know what shale is? Yeah. And so it slides a little bit when you walk on it.
Yeah, that's why I asked about the safety thing.
Yeah. So they said, look, get in your camps, have your soup, which is a same taste but different color each day. And so, you get some food in, play some cards and whatever with some of the guides that we're with and some of the other people that we're hiking with. And they said, look, we're going to wake you up around 11:30 p.m. So you only get a very short kind of nap that night, but you put on head torches and hike through the night so that you can summit Kili as the sun's coming up over the glaciers. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful sight. And so we start hiking, and we'd opened the tents, and there's like a few inches of snow had fallen while we were in there for our little nap. And so that on top of shale, when you take a step, it slides away each time. And your head's starting to pound by this stage because I think we're up over 5,000 meters at that point relatively quickly. Usually you take, slower rate and allow your body to acclimatize to it. And so your breaths are getting shorter. It's more laborious and those sort of things. And each step was made a lot harder because you're on shale now at this point rather than walking on firm packed ground. And so I started to feel it pretty heavily and started to vomit from the nausea that I was feeling with it. And so they're checking the head torch to make sure there was no blood and those sort of things in my vomit because they need to get you down immediately if that's the case. And the sun starts to come up like slowly around like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I fell over again. It was just feeling like hell. And I remember looking over at my dad, and he's leaning on his poles, just breathing in pretty heavily and going, oh, man. At one point, I thought, we're not going to make it up this bloody thing. And our guide, we had 2 guides, Eric and Tosha. And I remember Eric came over and put his hand on the back of my head, and he said, stop trying to look at the summit. And I was like, he said, if you keep looking at it, you're never going to get there. He said, look at your feet and just take 1 to 10 more steps. It was something that stuck with me for the rest of my life because 2 or 3 hours later, we were on the rooftop of Africa, they call it, looking at the sunrise, and had done it together. So
it's an amazing story.
Oh, sorry, a bit of an emotional one.
No, and you said that something that stuck with you. Is it something that you've applied to a lot? I mean, it's such good advice, right, for life. You understand the idea of I'm going to the summit, but it's the concentrating on 1 step at a time, which is, I think, the most important point. It's not to lose sight of the summit.
Yeah, spot on. You've got to know it's there.
Correct.
And I think that's one and why that's so important to me and why it kind of hits a nerve for me is I do live with that as a principle now in my life. And it was one of those moments that I didn't realize was a moment for me when it happened.
Yeah.
But in the fullness of time, when challenges happen in life, I remember I went through a rough time in life towards the start of the company. And I remember that thought came into my head. Eric saying to me, stop looking at the summit or you're never going to get there. So it can be when things get hard to lower the eyes, or something they say in footy a lot, raise the eyes, lower the eyes.
Yeah.
I think it's good as you need to be able to, when you're in a state of mental wellness, to be able to look out and plan and do those sort of things and look at all the big things happening in life. But you also then need to be able to take the shorter term view if things get hard, or if you need to get into execution mode once you've, like if it's in a goal setting context, if you're saying I want to do X in 5 or 10 years, you then need to shorten it down into those chunks that are, okay, then what do I need to be able to do today to execute against what I know is the summit out there? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Well, so I think for me, the way I'm interpreting it if we're going to put it into a business sense, which is, this is a business podcast. Strategy is, 5-year strategy, 3-year strategy, whatever it is. This is where we want to be. Then we break it down to a 12-month, and then we break it down to a 90-day sprint, and then we take it down, week on week, right? And so it's remarkable advice, especially, but I think it's advice for life, not just from a business point of view, isn't it? It's like understand where you're going, where you want to be, where you want your family to be, and where your friends are at, and then and work on that practice each day.
Yeah, I don't separate the two.
Yeah,
business and life. I mean, you spend so much time doing.
It's all molded, isn't it?
Well, I'm going to get it wrong, but I think you spend more time with the people you work with than you do with your own family.
Yeah, correct.
Typical work week, right? If you exclude the hours when you're sleeping.
Yeah, correct.
Right. You may as well get it in alignment with what you like to do in life.
Yeah, 100%. So obviously that's a major impact for you in your life, and then going through your schooling career, and then decide that, you know what, actually I'm going to pack up and go back to the States for a bit. Yeah. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, sure. I started university here.
Yeah.
I did my first year at University of South Australia, the McGill campus there, studying journalism.
Yep.
Because I didn't know what else to study. And I was still living at home with my mom and my dad. And for me, growing up, at least with a Yankee accent and having had some exposure in the States, I didn't really have that feeling like I was going to university. It was kind of just like a continuation of going to high school.
Yep.
And so I was like, I want to go out and try some, new things, make some mistakes of my own out in the new world, and have some fun while I'm doing it. I loved playing hockey. I loved outdoors and snowboarding and those sort of things. And so I was able to transfer to like a sister school. I don't know exactly what they're called, but I think they're sister schools that are affiliates in other locations. And there's like 10 of them in the States. And Colorado looked really cool, so I could transfer for up to a year while still being a UniSA student. So I was kind of like an international student studying at a sister school.
Yep.
Got to the end of towards the end of that year and was like, no, this is where I want to stay. I'd love to finish out and get my bachelor's here. So, yeah, hung out there and kept playing hockey. Tried to show up to class when I could.
Yeah. What were you studying? What did you?
I studied journalism, and then I had a minor in psychology as well.
Yeah, wow. So ending up in the tech world is something. Do you think it's had the journalistic approach, and do you think it's had an impact on your ability to think in a different way than what sort of most other tech people?
Yeah, I like I said earlier, I think you're just an amalgam of all the things that you do in your life. So I'm sure I could identify a few different things that assisted me from being in journalism. Or in psych, where I did some anthropology classes that was all about like New World and the Old World monkeys. And remember my teacher looked like Sigourney Weaver. That was, but no, it's certainly brought me some elements I think that I utilize to this day from an entrepreneurial standpoint.
Talking about that amalgamation piece of all the moments in your life, you mentioned sport. It was hockey you played, and you played at some pretty high levels.
Oh, not like you, Mr. Franco.
You played at some high. Don't worry about me. This is not a podcast about me. So you played at some pretty high levels.
We can flip it. Let's do
No. Maybe one other day. We're here for you today.
So hockey. I played inline hockey or roller hockey, something you call it. Ice hockey. Yeah. And then played a couple seasons of field hockey for the school I was going to.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
I played so many different sports in my life, but inline hockey was the one I played the most of.
Yeah.
Most accessible. There's only one ice rink here, so I did play ice, but it can be quite a challenging thing to get to the only ice rink and get rink time and those sort of things here. And inline was a lot easier because there was a lot more people playing at a lot more locations because, like rec centers could get converted into roller hockey rinks and those sort of things. So a similar game, but transferable skills. So really enjoyed playing that as a point in time. I think I was playing 5 games a week. So I'd play ice at 6 a.m, and then I'd go play 2 rec league games in the local league, and then I'd play at the kind of state level against the other state clubs here. And then, that turned into getting selected for South Australian team. I was probably 12 or 13, I think, when I played in my first one. And then got selected for the Australian squad a couple of times. So went and played in the Junior World Olympics and the Junior World Cup over in Detroit, Michigan I'll say it was like 2006 or 2007.
Yeah, well.
So that was good fun.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Got our butts kicked, but it was fun to go there and really experience the sport at that level. And yeah,
great job. So on the sport thing, I've asked this a lot, and I keep, I think the reason why I keep asking questions around, like, do you think it had impact, and how do you think that played out later in your life, is I'm always looking for this formula. I think there's so many formulas into what makes someone successful, or what makes someone, the person that they are. And I honestly believe, and I'm going to link this back to entrepreneurship and business ownership and even just leadership in general, right? Yeah. I honestly believe that sport, and specifically I'm going to say team sport to more of an extent, but I'm just going to bundle it all together in sport, has a major impact on someone in their life. And I think for me, I've made decisions with my family around getting my children into sport, and like they're playing basketball at the moment. It's a team sport, working with so many different individuals from all different aspects of life, from all different cultures of the world, coming together and learning how to work together in a team on strategy, on down to the plays, down to like focusing on how we're going to win the championship. So like this world, I think, is one that provides so much value. Do you think, I'm going to ask the same question, do you think that sport has played a major impact in your life, in who you are today?
Without a doubt.
Yeah. And why do you think that, look, I'm just going to ask a question because this comes from a point of knowing who you are. Why do you think sport is so important in people's lives?
In terms of being formative towards working well in a business context?
In general, fitness, I mean, the whole thing, but yes, informative towards business context.
Yeah, okay, so
in an entrepreneur sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, I think that being able to be agile, as I spoke about before, is like key to doing well in business. And I think I got that exposure early as a kid, moving around all the time, going, okay, that adaptability, the only constant is change kind of thing, is, that changes the status quo, and bringing a bunch of people into a group that are different in skill level, in their beliefs, understandings. It's the same thing like when you're playing a team sport, right?
Yeah.
You've played on that many different teams, and I've always loved that saying that a champion team beats a team of champions.
Yeah.
And I've played with those rough and sort of dudes that I grew up playing hockey with, that we weren't the most skillful players, but we went undefeated for, I think, almost 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Because we played as a team and we worked hard together. So I think there's that really good relatability in the team context. Individual sport's great too, because you learn disciplines and all those things about, and how to go through things and building a process and all those wonderful things. So I like the individual sports as well, because I play golf, but my exposure's largely been from a hockey standpoint, and I've found that it really does translate almost exactly to the point where you see now, like, some of the biggest business in the world is sport.
Yeah,
like from the wealth that they create and those sort of things.
I heard the other day that one of the biggest franchise, one of the most recognizable names in the world is New York Yankees, right?
It's crazy, right? Yeah. So I think it shows that they can be very good businesses. If that, I guess, validates the concept of, does sport translate well to business? Well, I think sport's become a business.
Yeah.
But also I like to relate it as well a lot, because you think about, take AFL, you support a disgusting team, the Geelong Cats, but they would review first thing Monday, right? They'd look at all the stats and those sort of things and how they play the game, and they'd check their GPS trackers and all the other things, and they would look to adjust for the week that comes, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's the same sort of thing in how we could run our businesses, and I think if people took that analogy and applied it to running their business and ran it like a sports team, you'd actually probably end up with a lot more successful businesses.
Yeah, I agree. But I would go even further down the rabbit hole and say that while you're on the field, you're getting feedback instantly.
100%.
Right? Yeah, you're getting feedback from the way you kick the ball. So there's this self-awareness piece, right? Yeah. You're getting feedback from the coach who's yelling at you on the side.
You got a runner out there delivering some feedback, right? Not even waiting for the end of the quarter.
The other players in your team, if you're not lifting your weight, they're yelling at you saying...
Well, because I think the reason is like accountability is great, but that's because coaching in the moment, like as close as you can give the feedback to when what needs to be worked on, corrected, or rewarded, is the best thing that I think you can do from a growth standpoint.
So let's move into this business world. We're talking about your growth, and so you've gone over to the US, and
you still make me cry again.
Yeah, and you've graduated in the middle of the financial crisis.
Oh, yes.
And decided that door-to-door sales was the option.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you know about that. Yeah, I guess so. So, yeah, I did. I graduated right as the fin crisis was kind of in full swing. So, you know, I had some friends move into short sale and flipping houses and those things and trying to make that work. And I didn't have any seed capital to try to go do those sort of things they were doing. And so I just went there out of apply for a bunch of different things. And I mean, I graduated in journalism, but I didn't think that was probably the field I wanted to be in unless it was like sports journalism or those things. And I think everybody in my graduating class wanted to do that stuff at that point in time. So didn't think that was going to really happen. So just started applying to random things. And there was this really vague article that was about, you know, commission-based job and you can, you know, make your own hours, blah, blah, blah. And so I went and I found a suit. I hadn't seen one in like 4 or 5 years. It was just,
was it baggy? Or was it?
No, it didn't fit me as well, unfortunately. And so I went down to this interview, and it was like this random rented, like old retail shop, and there was like this couch in there, and it just looked like they just set it up that day. It wasn't like a reputable place. I'm like, what have I gotten into here? When there's 3 people there interviewing me, and it was door-to-door vacuum sales for Kirby, and I was like, look, man, you got to get out there and get some exposure and whatever. And so I tried it for about 8 minutes. Decided it wasn't. That's hard yakka. Like door-to-door sales. That's
but honestly, how long were you doing it for?
I literally think I did it for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
Yeah. No good.
Yeah. We're talking Colorado. It's winter time. You don't know people. You don't know in the States people are packing.
I'm
just kidding. But no, it wasn't something that resonated with me. And you know, I think you need to be able to see yourself in it. And I was like, well, you know, I've learned. But did I take a lesson from it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, you sometimes do need to get some doors slammed in your face. Yeah, I forgot you knew about that.
So when did you move back? What happens now? Where do you go?
So I came back for Aussie. Yeah, it would have been Christmas, so summertime here. Didn't really know what was going on. Vacuum sales was not turning out to be my calling, and so I came back for I think a 3-week visit over that time period. Spend the holidays with the family. Dad picks me up at the airport. We're driving back, and at that point in time, he was I think chairman of .com Systems, and so he and some other guys had started that branch locally, and he said, "Oh, stop in and we'll see some of the old guys he used to work with." Because like when I was in config, a lot of the same people that in his former companies were in this business, and so I got there, and a couple of the guys said, "Oh, do you want to get a coffee?" I said, "Yeah, sure." I had a good Australian coffee in a while. America cannot make coffee. And so we went down to the coffee shop, and they were asking me what I was doing in my career, and I told them about my, you know, meteoric rise in the door-to-door vacuum sales industry. No, and they said, would you consider doing like a sales support role with our company? And at first, I kind of dismissed it, but Dad had me captive for 2 or 3 weeks while I was home. What are you doing with your, you know, X, Y, and Z for your life? And then I thought about it, and I was like, well, you know, home is where your family is and where your heart is and those things. And living over in the States didn't really feel like I had that family unit. And like, all right, well, I'll head back, sell everything that I had there, my car, and get rid of all my kind of stuff from the place that I was renting there, and then move back here like 4 weeks later. Yeah, wow. Started as a internal account manager doing sales support for some awesome people. And then, yeah, that was kind of getting into, I guess, business and into IT properly at that point in time.
And there comes the rise, I think, from what I understand, you know, taking on various roles over the years and end up managing the whole sales team and running a portfolio of $60 million plus. It's a pretty quick growth.
Oh, it was it really was. It was pretty breakneck speed. That company was growing massively, and they did very well with the company they were building early days. And with growth comes opportunity. And I think through those journeys, I tried to continue to push myself to be at least considered in the discussion when those things would happen. My old man had exited the business, and I wanted to, make it for my own, not feel like, oh, hey, my old man has, paved the way for me completely.
Yeah.
You walk, the path of other people, and I always love that quote, if I've seen further than others, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. It was Isaac Newton or something like that. And that for me is like I got to learn from my pops and see the way he went about things. And he didn't necessarily go down the direct sales kind of route in his career. So it was good to be able to learn that as a craft and those things as well. He was largely self-taught with that. And I was able to kind of take what I could from him and then start adding my own bits.
So for those who may not know, the first podcast that we did, we just spoke about sales. We didn't really dive into your life as we are now, which is it's gone a bit of us about the way we've had this podcast. But so if you want to learn Connor's thoughts process on sales, go and have a listen to that one. But that was 3 years ago now.
Yeah. What
have you learned since then?
Oh man!
Just give us a quick rundown. What you and I both have this love for sales. So what?
I think I've learned to probably invest more time in the craft of selling in terms of learning more about how to be a pro at it, because I've had to teach others a lot more.
Yeah.
My team's a lot bigger now than it was when we first had a chat.
How big is the team now?
We're 10 in the sales force. The business is about 60.
Yeah.
So we believe in the power of a strong sales force. It's not a dirty word in our business, which I think we would have spoken about last time. But no, I've studied up a lot on some key kind of global experts around sales and how to help, build sales professionals up rather than there's a philosophy, okay, I'll just go take a top salesperson from another business and it'll automatically work for mine. That hasn't really been our approach and focus. It's been about kind of taking folks that have the right attributes and then being able to build them in a structured kind of approach. And we've got this, we call the sales pillars of excellence that we've developed around that of the world that we see as probably what our market, what we sell, how it maps directly to kind of what our customers need.
Yeah, brilliant. Anyway, let's not touch on that anymore. So in 2016, you decided to refinance your home and to generate some funds to create this thing called Nuago, which was an IT solutions-based business. Can you just share the story of the inception of Nuago? But firstly, just explain to us what Nuago means, because
So Nuago, we were sitting around trying to figure out, what do I tell first in this? Let me tell you how it started, and I'll tell you how the name.
All right, great.
So my brother was in Duntroon in officer school.
Yeah.
And he hurt his back, and he had to come back on medical leave because he messed his back up really bad. And met a lady while he was back here and fell in love and was like, oh, man, I might stay on medical leave.
Yeah.
Love this lady. And he and I had both at different points in time, being, son of the old man, thought about, we started a tech company of our own at some point. And so we kind of collided at the same time with these similar sort of ideas. And Dad, as he does, calls a family meeting with me and my brother. And we sat at this coffee shop in Aldgate in March of 2016 and said, can we put something together and make something that's pretty spectacular? And we agreed on it. It took, a little bit of back and forth. How would it look and those things? And we shook hands on it then. Said, all right, let's go dip into the mortgage and try to get some money out and put some at least startup capital of our own in. We didn't want to be beholden to any external investors or large business loans or those things. So we don't have any external debt or didn't have any and still don't to this day. But, that was a focus for us, was put in our own stuff. And then it was like, all right, well, now what's it going to look like and those things? And the first thing you got to do with any business is identify, is there a gap to be served in the market? Or are you just going to go be another same sort of player in the market. And we thought there was this really addressable piece in the mid-market where, we were like, there's kind of this Goldilocks zone, which is the South Australian customers. Like 98% of businesses fit this archetype of, largely privately held. At that point in time, we said, look, probably 50 to 500 seat businesses is where our focus would fit. It's broadened a little bit more since then. But bringing, cloud-based cybersecurity, modern technologies to the fore in business language. Like, I think there was a lot of really competent players in the market, really, really talented engineering people. But they weren't necessarily starting a business with a business context in mind. They were just like, I'm really good at this craft. I'll start a business so that more people can have it.
Yeah.
Rather than kind of starting with that full proper marketing approach and those sort of things. What are we going to go address out in the market? And so with that, Nuago was born at that, we're going to call Elite IT was one of our first names that we came with. I'm so glad we didn't.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, I wouldn't have bought.
Well, we wanted it to be timeless. We were like, well,
Yeah, 100%.
you think about a lot of brands globally, they don't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah.
Like Apple's obviously the one that comes to mind. I literally think it's a piece of fruit.
Yeah.
But we all associate the technology coming with it. And so we said, well, and I'm not trying to compare us to Apple, by the way. But effectively, we started looking at different words, and you go and try to register anything with ASIC. You try to find a domain name that isn't taken already by somebody that's crouching on URLs in the hope they're going to sell it to you for lots of money one day.
Yeah.
And so we started looking to not English words, right? And my Maymay, shout out to Maymay, she's going to be 92 years old. She's from Algeria, from French Algiers. And she fled from...
So Maymay's grandma.
Yeah. She doesn't look a day over 70. She had to flee Algeria because of some challenges back then. She's a Jewish lady and had to flee the country because of fear of persecution and whatnot. And so moved to southern France, but she still to this day speaks very fluent French. My dad and his siblings all speak French. My dad won't let you know that he knows French very well. And we thought, well, let's have a look at some French words. And the French word for cloud is nuage, N-U-A-G-E. But you look into it, and everybody tries to sue you for everything these days. And Nokia in Europe had a company called Nuage Networks. And so somebody said, oh, you might maybe just tweak it a little bit. And so we changed the last letter of it to be Go, and we thought that was kind of evocative of taking action. It was 5 letters. It was easy to remember. Didn't mean anything out in the market that it was already associated with something, and the domain was available.
Yeah, that's the main thing, isn't it? Really,
exactly. It kind of got to that point because you're sitting there for so long working on a name. You're like, we just need to decide on something. So that's
what was the, you said the first thing you do when you go off and start a business, which I think is great advice, is to understand the gap in the market, right? Further to that, though, in order for it to be able to, I think we will both agree on it. In order for it to work, you need to be connected to the vision. You need to be connected to the purpose. What was it that you guys were hoping to achieve?
Really good question. We've spent a lot of time recently because it changes as you go through the journey. You need to always keep looking back at that, making sure that it's relevant and that it resonates with the people first and foremost in your business.
Yep.
Right? Because your vision should inspire the people that work in your organization, which will then go and give your customers a delightful experience, which returns shareholder value, which allows for growth of the business.
Yep.
Right? And so I think Branson talked about it, the Virgin way, right?
Yep.
Treat your people well, treat your customers well, and that'll make a successful organization. So for us, was always about the kind of human element of tech, right? Where on the user side of things, there's a human being on the other side of the piece of technology. We need to be able to put tech into a business context and make it easier. It's that grandma test. Like, if I go talk to my Maymay, which she can use FaceTime, she's badass. Yeah. But being able to explain it to really anybody, because I think when we become experts in a field, and by no means am I an expert technically, like from a very deep technical engineering standpoint, we tend to lean on how much we know in our craft, and it actually, I think, creates a difficulty in communicating with other people. It's like if you go see a doctor and they just start speaking to you in all these Latin terms, and you're like, I have no idea what you're saying, whether it's good or bad, just very big words that I don't understand.
Yep.
And it's the same sort of thing like I can apply from a technology lens. We love acronyms in tech. Just go in there and you're just throwing acronyms around. And if no one's there to be able to decode your message, then you're not being a very good communicator. So that's really what we've wanted to be able to do. we sell a lot of similar things that other organizations you can buy from them. But I guess what differentiates you most of the time is your people, your processes, the values you live by. And that's one of the things we've always tried to focus on.
So when all is done with Nuago,
Yeah.
what does the world look like? Like what are you trying to achieve in that space?
I don't know what that necessarily looks like, but for me, when I'll be happy, not when I'll be happy, when I'll be most happy with that question is when somebody stops me in the street 50 years from now and says, "You remember that company?" Because I hope that Nuago's around 50 years from now. With how businesses' lifespans are, sometimes it shortens because it's so much more competitive.
You told me a stat about that the other day, didn't you?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like the length of companies that were on the index in the United States is like less than 1/3 of what it used to be like 20 years ago. Because it is so much more competitive and technology plays a huge role in that. So hopefully it's around 50 years from now. But if it's not, or if I'm not, they come along and say, that was the best place I ever worked.
Yeah.
It was kick-ass. Like I found a lot in myself because I always believe like we're here to push people to achieve the best they can for themselves, right? That's the best way we can be of service to them is to help them along that journey.
Yeah.
But I had a hell of a good time while I did it. And I think there's space for both of those.
So I'm just going to, I love this. So fun in my head is a surefire way of creating a company culture, right? And I think that's pretty much what you've just alluded to there is that you guys are, you're building a business, you're doing remarkable things. You've experienced this rapid growth from 20 plus million, to 20 plus million, 60 odd staff. Do you think fun is, and the way and the life that you guys bring to the company and the joy that you bring to the clients, is that been the key factor to your success?
I think it's certainly been one of them.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly been one of them, right? When you look at how difficult it was on everybody through a pandemic period that really stress tests people and those sort of things, you wouldn't stick at it if it wasn't. And so I think that was the biggest trial of it. And I just was thinking, as you were asking me that question, I shouldn't have been thinking, but I was. Back in the office, even just yesterday, just like jamming music, playing music videos with the sales team. We're having a dance break, all sitting around laughing, pegging stress balls at each other. We do some work, I promise. But it's just those things that, I walked over to a couple of the ladies in ops and they said, I was like, I'm just having so much fun today. And I was like, awesome. Like that needs to be an element of a workplace. And I think you can sense that when you walk our halls, right? Yeah, we got stressful days. We work in high tech and cybersecurity, and we got to be there for our customers if they get in a jam sometimes. So we need to be able to focus and kick ass when we need to. But making sure that you remind yourself to take those times that, if we are with these people more time than we spend with our families, shouldn't we be having a damn good time with them as well? So be around like-minded people. I think it's important to get that right first, though, because you can't create that culture unless you hire based on your values.
Perfect. It leads me to my next question. I think if there is one thing that I do know about your company, and actually probably the one thing that impresses me the most is your commitment to company values. I know that you personally have a strong set of beliefs and values and very high integrity that guides your operations, both in and out of the boardroom, which is exactly what you said, right? So can you expand on those values of your company and what they mean to you? And I know when we had Mick on the show, he spoke extensively about the importance of them, but I want to hear your version.
Yeah, I might cherry pick a couple of them, and it's I guess it's on point for us at the moment because we've just gone through our 10-year revision, like rebaselining vision exercise, which the first thing that you do is you look at your values to inform your vision. Yep. Right, because that's really where it should all come from. If those are at the core of the foundation of everything you do and decisions radiate out from those, so then that puts pressure on your values. You got to make sure you get them right so that they promote the right sort of behaviors. I kind of view that as like similar to the sporting analogy we talked about before. There's a certain policy that you may apply for your club, like the way that you operate. It's the same sort of thing. Other folks might have good opinions on the way they run their footy club or their business, but these are the rules that we like to play by. Yep. My favorite one at the moment is we are brave. And it's not just that statement, it's all the things that we are and we are not as a result of that.
Yeah.
That statement that I think is really important in enforcing those things. And it's really important that people, and we haven't always done the greatest job of this, we're trying to take it even to the next level at the moment, of good and bad and what they look like. So with we are brave is we're authentic, we're vulnerable.
Yep.
But we believe in radical candor, right? Yep. Like we need to have open and honest discussion because we agreed that we were going to do that for each other, and that's how we grow. Mm-hmm. You'd have that in a sporting team, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if you apply that sort of accountability into a business, but courage and consideration are super important in that. Is having the courage to speak out on whatever it is that we need to table in an honest fashion, but doing it in a considerate way. Don't go there and yell at a person. You don't go and destroy them. You don't go demoralize them. You look at it as the reason that I'm telling this person is because I care about their development. And so if you approach it with that lens and then you go, so I like the bravery one. Yeah. And also just being brave in the context of being brave, airplanes take off into the wind, right?
We obviously the company that I operate with is SynergyIQ, and we work in the world of corporate culture and helping organizations through their complex change programs and initiatives. And values for us is always top of the tree, right? It is as we embark on any change or as we embark on a company culture that we want to create. It is, what do we stand for? And I love the way you guys have articulated it from we are, right?
In the rework, all five of them start with we are.
We are, and
because it promotes we. I mean, it's
exactly, and I think that is 100%. The way in which you should look at values, right? You can have honest on the wall, but like those things are, we are
hygiene values.
Yeah, exactly. They're you should just be honest, right? Like the value should be something that we want to hold ourselves accountable to. And I love your list, which is great. Just on that, then, talking about culture.
Yeah,
we've mentioned fun, we've mentioned values. And I know you and Brendan and the team. So let's go. We got you, Brendan, Ben.
In terms of
in
the senior exec or the owners, or
senior exec.
Yeah, so senior exec. Please don't forget anybody, Connor. No, so I work with an awesome senior team. So Antonetta, who heads up our operations side of things, she's magic. Does things all across all things of business that most people don't even know that she does. Yeah. See myself, I run the sales and marketing functions of the business. My brother's our managing director, the integrator. Ben Schofield, who runs our managed services, the director of managed services, and Ben Gordon-Edwards, who's the operations manager for managed services. Mark Whisker, who runs our professional services division, and then Dave Brown, who's the head of our design and innovation.
So you, as a team, do you table the conversation culture?
Oh yeah.
And what does that look like? What do you do? Because culture is a thing that happens when no one's looking, and what do you, as a leadership team, focus on around that table?
Culture is the output of how well you live by your values.
Correct.
Right. So if that's the ability to sense it, right? He's going, that this thing has occurred. Okay, what fundamentally has gone wrong then from a values perspective? If we go back and look at those, so like I said earlier, if you clearly define your values and they mean something and they're real, and you've gone through, a lot of time, testing those to make sure that they're going to be right for you, then they become, your gospel. Yeah. And so you can always try to, that's at least where the first place we go is look back to that and go, what fundamentally has gone wrong in the process there? Is it a values related thing where we're not, practicing as we preach or living by these things every day? And I think a lot of times that'll be the chrysalis of where the problem probably started. There's a lot of things that happen between those values and a culture, but I think you can always start by looking at that as the kind of.
So did you create that expectation on yourselves to and you hold each other account at the table? Is that something is it front of mind? Or, just having walked through the halls of Nuago, you can feel it and sense it, right? And I know it's not just the sign on the wall. that has these values. Although you have a really nice sign, like the illuminated values on the wall.
You like it.
I'm just really interested in the psyche of the leadership team and the way in which you incorporate that into everyday language.
The way that we incorporate our values in everyday language.
Everyday language, yeah.
I mean, you hit the most important thing there is that there's always that saying in a company, the fish rots from the head down. I think that's right. Fish rots from the something along those lines, right? The problem starts at the top.
Yeah,
right? That's really what leadership should be about. Is all about taking accountability for things, right? So, share the praise when you get it, accept the blame whenever, even if you didn't feel that you intentionally did it. That's part of what a leader needs to do.
Yep.
And so that starts with also you need to then be the first person in, last person out from a value standpoint. Is that you need to always be walking the walk with that. So you got to test it on yourself. And we've developed something called the bar, and it comes from the EOS principles of you take your values, however many there is. You recommend between 4 and 7 values for a company. We've got 5. And then you put it in there, and then you put things GWC, which is, does this person get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capability to do it? So for each of those, in our case, 8 principles, it's the GWC plus our 5 values. You can put your name next to it. You can do a self-score for this and go, all right, for our values, I can either give myself for each of the categories a plus minus, or a minus. And you figure out, well, the bar is, this is the standard in our business of what we're willing to accept for anybody, is, no more than 2 plus minuses. No minuses at all. Because if someone's not living by your values, none of the other stuff matters. It doesn't matter if they're a superstar, but they're a brilliant jerk. I mean, that's going to end up being a short-lived strategy, I think, if you allow that stuff to permeate. So we really try to your question, to answer it, I mean, we talk about it constantly. Absolutely constantly. Yep. It's one of the most important things. And I think in businesses in the last 3 to 5 years, it's become the number one most important thing. If you're not creating a place where people are feeling valued, that they're feeling like they're working on something greater than themselves, you're probably going to be doing the organization a disservice, and it'll decay over time.
100%. Music to my ears, mate. Linking back to the entrepreneurship conversation.
Yeah.
And the In Daily Award, that if there was a young aspiring CEO standing in front of you right now, or a young inspiring entrepreneur, I should say, looking to start their business and looking to grow and scale at the growth that you guys have, what's your advice to them?
Particularly for South Australian young up-and-coming ones, and I'll explain why in a second I say that. Be okay with failure. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Really, I think and I mentioned this, I think, in my speech, there's a pervasive mentality that I think is admirable, where Aussies are largely humble. And there's that tall poppy syndrome thing has crept into the vernacular a lot. And I think it's been distorted a little bit to say, well, don't have a go to be successful or try to pop your head up or be, and you've had a lot of successful people on this show as an example. That's to celebrate. Like, that should be celebrated, not cut down. And I think just be careful that you don't apply that mentality to having a go. You got to be in the game to win it. You spend too long analyzing, sitting on the field. And, like, if you use like a American football analogy, you sit there and try to put together your whole playbook without running any games, running any plays and going out there and seeing different opponents and doing stuff and iterating. You're never going to become a championship team. Yeah. So, great is the enemy of good when it comes to getting started on this stuff.
Yeah, I love it. You we'll touch off. I'm going to look forward at Nuago a bit later, but in amongst all this, and I'm not sure how much you want to go into it, but in amongst all this, you went through some pretty difficult periods in your life.
Yeah.
A family breakdown, some mental health issues. I'm going to open the floor for you and say, are you able to help us understand how you navigated your way through a challenging time in your life whilst trying to manage a business that was rapidly growing and scaling?
Yeah. That was a big time period in life, because you don't know how to deal with situations you haven't been in before. What I will say is that it really, you get an opportunity to rebuild the self that you want to. And I was going into my 30s. And so it was kind of that time period for me when I think going into each new decade, it gets scary. 40s is going to be a scary one again. What are the big things that I want to rebuild with the software? I work in IT, right? So the version, if it's something is a 3.1, what's version 4 going to look like? Not the minor iterations of 3.2, 3.3. What are the big things that are going to change in life? So it came around that time for me too, where a big challenges happened, where we ran out of money in the company, and I was going through a split and had a 6-month-old child. So dealing with all of the kind of things that come along with that and the stresses that are associated with it, I really had to focus on positive mental health things that I could do for myself in the time that I had between juggling things. So meditation was huge for me during that time, absolutely huge. And I don't do it enough today that I should. I still meditate a few times a week, but I was doing it morning and night because I needed it. Listening to positive affirmations sort of things and trying to really limit the people I surrounded myself with at that point in time. I was super selective about what was going to be assisting the road I wanted to be on, and reinforcing the positive values and behaviors that I wanted to keep me rebuilding the self that I wanted for me. And I'm glad I went through the process because I almost had a chance to just be like, all right, cool, here's the new version of me. This is what I do and don't want in my life. And it was a good journey, but you've got to have some people around to support. Don't suffer in silence, because it can torment you. And I'm a huge advocate for mental health awareness. And my team just finished today the push-up challenge for Support and Lifeline. Those sort of things are really common in our workplace that we talk about, and I don't think it gets enough true airtime. I think people love these days to share a hashtag or share something, but truly rolling your sleeves up and getting involved with doing something with that. So all our senior leadership team have mental health first aid training, just 2 pretty confronting days about how to deal with somebody who is suffering with a level of challenge.
Where do you do that?
There's numerous places that pop up and courses that you can do. It's a 2-day thing. I can certainly send you some details if you want to put it on the post after this.
Absolutely.
But, it's brilliant. It was a group of 6 or 7 of us, and you sit around and go through the different scenarios that can occur and how to deal with it. And I think most people shy away from being direct. You have to be direct with people and talk to them as if, are you considering self-harm right now? You actually need to ask them that question, because often a direct answer will get a direct response for you. And if you shy away from things or you don't know the words to use, you can actually make it a lot worse. Like, one of the things I learned is that if somebody's really suffering is don't compare anything you've ever been through. You're taking away the power of whatever they're feeling right now and saying that there's sameness. Oh yeah, I went through that too. And I think we often do that a lot in cultures. I still have to catch myself on it. But that was a really important thing.
It's an important point. I don't want to stray off the topic of mental health here. I want to stick on it for a bit, but do you think that as you said it, I kind of thought of my children actually from the point of view of don't compare anything that you've been through. And my kids are growing up playing sport right now and taking it quite seriously. Obviously, I played at a high level as a junior in my career, and I often compare myself. Do you think that analogy or that scenario applies across the board, or is that purely at a mental health thing?
Oh, purely at a mental health
thing.
level, right? It's just about what state is this person in?
Yeah.
If they're in a state of they're in the rat brain, right? They're in the kind of fight, flight, freeze sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just not the time for it, right? But once they're back down into the green, they come out of the red, the amber into the green.
Yeah.
You're good to go, because those are going to be really valuable lessons for your kids. You're having a chat to Isla or whatever, and you're like, yo, here's what happened with the basketball tournament last weekend. Yeah. And I remember when I was playing juniors in cricket. And it's a positive thing to do at that point. But if she's Devo because she's just, lost a game or, hurt herself and can't play for the rest of the season or something like that.
Yeah, so it's a really important point, having your own awareness and mental awareness on where the other person's at and meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Brene Brown does a really good thing, like get in the hole with them.
Exactly.
You know,
empathy versus sympathy. I think. Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Your journey in your own mental health has taken a turn. I think you're like, at a point in your life you hit a low. Was meditation the only thing that you managed?
No way. You got to try to use all the tools in the Swiss Army knife, right? There's no exact thing that'll, I think, solve it. It's different for everybody. Getting outdoors, I've always found that nature and fresh air and those sort of things really help. So even just taking, a walk whenever you're feeling anything, and just really remembering to breathe. I got super into Wim Hof for a while.
Yes,
I still, he's incredible. I like a lot of his principles, and really that whole finding comfort in discomfort is, I think, something I've become a lot better at. So I guess that, you go through those lows, you go through those highs, but you learn how to self-regulate. And
you talked about your leadership team going through, the training. I think what's going through my mind is that, if you're, and I'm speaking to the younger generation and the entrepreneurs who are coming up and starting businesses, and those who are looking at growing. There is so many things that you need to do to concentrate on it, even just growing the business, let alone all the other bits and pieces that come in as part of that puzzle. Is this something that you started early on, or is this something that you've built on as the business grew?
Definitely built on it. I mean, you have to start somewhere and get a level of the 14,000 foot kind of view. You've got to run a really good system, to draw the parallel to the sporting thing again as well. You'll have a brand of footy a team plays.
Yeah.
Right, and not every player will work that well in that system. So you could have an all-star player, and, if you want to bring Joel Selwood back in and bring him over to, Port Adelaide, you probably wouldn't play the same style of footy.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have him over at Port. Right? No, I'm just kidding.
Because you don't have champions at your team.
Oh, wow. We're not going to get down this road. Okay, it'll get bloody in here. No, so I think having a system, really knowing the brand of business you play, the type of organization that you are, the cultures that your team operates with. I think those things are all super important, and we've taken a more mature approach to that each year that we've been in operation. This year more than ever. I've loved the system that we roll with now. It feeds itself. It's really cool. It's called EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system. I've been geeking out on that.
I know you have. Jindo Lee, another guest who's been on this show from Happy Co. He swore by it on when he said it was absolutely the thing that changed his life.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things that you become a believer in. It's nothing that's crazy groundbreaking in terms of new research, but the model and the simplicity that they've boiled it down to, that everything, from your values that feed your vision, that feed your, the niche that you play in, the 10-year picture for the company, which maps down to 3-year, 1-year, 90-day sprints, the kind of weekly level 10 meetings that you have for the company around the big rock items to move the business forward. It's super cool.
Yeah, great.
Because it takes the clutter out of your head. You mentioned before, working on so many different things, and if you know that you've got a system that works for you, you basically can put those things on shelves and know that they're going to get taken care of because the framework caters to it.
Yeah.
So, it's been really nice getting a lot of work leads up to getting it right. But, when you get to the other side of it, there's this breath of fresh air that you can kind of more be in the moment, stay in what you need to be doing right now, which is, being there with your people or your customer or whatever it might be.
And I think it's kind of where my point comes from of, is it something you built on? Because there is so much to do. Mm-hmm. There's so much to do. You have a philosophy that you said to me, which was sort of elevate and delegate. Is that the
delegate and elevate? Yeah.
Delegate. Can you explain to me? And has that been part of your method in being able to introduce all these things? And it's obviously something that you and Brendan and the team can't just take on yourself all the time. It is about getting the team involved.
Yeah, totally. Delegate and elevate is one of those things that comes from EOS.
Okay.
I've shamelessly stolen it from that because I think it's a really good one. I'll go backwards to go forwards maybe in answering this. So in starting the company is you kind of, let's say at the end of each year, that's like a footy season.
Yeah.
Is you go and you hang up the uniform, hang up the boots, do a review on the season. All right, we played these 18 opponents. We won some, we lost some. These are the skills that we'll want to take with us. probably not going to do those ones going forward. And then you look forward and go, well, what does the next season look like? Here's the new opponents. Here's the key things I want to focus on learning and developing and those sort of things. So I think that mentality is something you need to have at the end of each year, and delegation, doing that effectively is key. Delegation is not handballing. Delegation is, is a skill, and it's an art, I think, as well. And it's something we teach. So there's, some frameworks that you can operate with that around the levels of delegation that you can go through. And I think that's a really powerful thing, because I would think most business owners that have seen some level of high growth for their business would have had a challenge of getting in their own way of growth, because they haven't let go of the vine early enough in the process to go to the next kind of thing that the business needs for you at that point in time. And that's why I think it's super valuable if you can, I always talk about in the business, on the business. Like if you can literally think about it as you're changing a hat, you've got to be able to look at your own organization externally from it. And what really helps with that is building out your accountability chart, your org chart, but with the roles and responsibilities in each of that. And you put it as that now, and then what does that look like in, let's say, the 3-year picture? And by doing that process, you're actually kind of able to look at your company. You might be in a couple of those boxes, because in startup mode, you're in every one of those boxes. Yeah. But then if you're continuing, you've got this we've created this great vision that's based on our values out into the future. And then the plan maps back to this 3-year picture that's got some more specific details around it, which includes your accountability chart. Well, then what do I need to be doing to be moving to where the organization will ideally be 3, 5, 10, whatever your planning horizon looks like? Does that answer your question?
It does. And I think what you talked about hats is actually putting on a different hat. I would almost change that around. It's like taking off the hats that you don't need to wear anymore. Yeah. Right? Because you have them all on when you start a business, don't you? Yeah. And, maybe there is this hat that you aspire to wear at the top of the hill,
or it feels like one of those giant 10-gallon hats or whatever. They're one of those big old westerns.
Yeah,
it's huge. It's crushing my spine.
The Homer Simpson one. Yeah. Get the taco.
100%. The Simpsons have an analogy for everything.
Stay humble and stay gritty is something that you say all the time. I love it, and grit is one of our values here at SynergyIQ. And you definitely are a humble human being. Can you share your experience on why you use this terminology a lot?
Yeah, look, it's written on the inside of this watch band.
Yeah,
stay humble, stay gritty. It's whatever reason that's stuck out as a couple of things for me to help keep me grounded. Right, as a younger man, I was probably falsely confident.
Yep.
Sometimes called arrogance.
Yep. Yep. Been there, done that.
And so I think you get humbled in life. Like there's that quote, be humble that you may be humbled, in the Talmud, and it really is. It's so true, right? That you never know when life's going to just smack you down. And it's got a way of doing that and keeping you, I think, in an optimal kind of zone. Not getting too big for whatever the situation is, but also then being able to enjoy the fruits of the hard work that you did. That's one of the things I've always kind of struggled with a little bit, is kind of, all right, what's next? All right, I think we even had the chat after 40 under 40.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, cool.
What's next?
As a competitive person or growing up with that sort of, always moving to the next thing can sometimes be hard to just, kind of sit with something and be happy where you are.
I think I get asked because obviously, Entrepreneur of the Year in the 40 under 40, but there's also another bunch of 40 people that got selected that didn't. Well, I think there's another 30 other people that did make the squad, who didn't get like an individual award, and I was lucky enough to be one of those. But I remember our conversation after. It was literally that. It's like, what's next? Yeah. Is that a fault? Is that I struggle with
probably.
Yeah, I struggle with enjoying the moment. It's like, cool, tick, next, and maybe that is something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, it's something I'd personally like to work on.
Yeah.
Maybe some people don't have enough looking at what's next. I don't know. It's something I'm consciously aware of.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's because it's something I want to take away that's positive that I do. But also at the same time, there are elements of you that are innate in who you are. I don't think that the start your own business startup world is for everyone, because it's not everyone's flow state. It's something that works well with some people and not with others, and we all kind of gravitate, I think, in time towards those sort of career paths and whatnot.
I got more congratulations for being under 40 than I did.
Yeah, I had a lot of people. You're not under 40, are you? I got a few years left, man. Come on.
So we're going to follow this path of this business ownership thing and growing and scaling a business. And one question that I have to ask you, because I almost ask it to everyone that comes on this show, is the role that family plays within all this. And you said earlier you don't separate the two, which I really love. And I try not to as well, but I can't help to see that sometimes there's a faint line in between the two. So how can we, as leaders and entrepreneurs, fully realize our visions and pursue what it is that we're trying to achieve, while at the same time trying to cultivate these loving relationships?
Yeah. Oh, man, that's a really good question. I think if you're going to do something like a startup or a business ownership type thing, and whatever you do, it probably, not even just in business ownership, is the whole family should be bought in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it should be a journey that you're all going on together, not just, this is something that me or, my wife is doing, or it should be truly, what's going on for our family, what is best for our family, because there's no way that most people you would know, I know be true for you, it's certainly true for me, that I can do the Entrepreneurial Nuago thing without the incredible support of my loving wife, my kids, my extended family, my friends. You've got to have all that stuff in order, and people that support you. The amount of times that my wife is the one that encourages me on when I'm down. She's my best friend, and so having her there to be able to have her as a support network is paramount. I've got 2 incredible daughters. I've got a son on the way. Like, the amount of things that my wife does in the day for supporting our family, makes what I do look trivial, in my opinion. She doesn't get the support she deserves in that. I wish she could go accept the award for me up there, but that's why I said before, and you said, maybe there's a couple of cliche things there, but I genuinely believe that. And the people that are around me all deserve. It's all a little bit for everybody that, I hope they know who they are when I'm talking right now.
Yeah, I think, well, I said cliche, but you're right, is you can't achieve anything without the people around you. It's that simple. This is not a journey that you can take on by yourself. You need the right support network. And
Definitely.
Looking forward, I'm going to start rounding up. Move into the home stretch. Looking forward, Nuago wants to what?
Nuago wants to. So kind of what's, forward vision sort of stuff?
What do you guys want to achieve?
We want to really be the premier South Australian owned business when it comes to IT transformation, right? Yeah. I think we're in a very, very good position. But if we want to continue to live by our values, we'll grow the company because it creates more employment opportunities for people to have that positive experience, more customers to be able to have the level of service, knowledge transfer, and those sort of things that we give them through the services that we provide. Yep. So, continue to have a sustained growth that moves towards that moment that I spoke about 50 years from now when someone says, "This is the best fucking place I ever worked."
I love it.
Sorry for swearing. But
no, don't be sorry. So the growth Australia-wide is on the cards?
Not in a structured way. Not in that we're saying, hey, a lot of the customers we support have national presence in a way, shape, or form. So it certainly wouldn't necessarily be a no, but it's not something that we're going to go out and do tomorrow. But maybe it is. I got to keep people guessing. It's more about how do we continue to be an employer of choice here in South Australia, serving South Australian businesses that are looking to have a national presence. If as a byproduct through that process, we find ourselves with opportunities that match what we want to achieve as the owners and as the people who deliver on the promises every day, then maybe we'll consider that. But it's certainly not something that, you know, I'm looking to sign any paperwork on in any sort of near term.
And what role, while we're on the topic of future, what role do you want to play in mentoring the future generation of entrepreneurs here in South Australia?
A big role. Exactly what that looks like, I'm not certain. I know I want to pay it back in any way I can in my life, whether that's through the knowledge I can impart and saying, don't step on those rakes that I stepped on, or
another Simpson analogy, yeah.
Sideshow Bob. Yep, absolutely. But I get that opportunity right now inside my own business as well. So that is my first priority, is taking care of my business baby.
Yeah.
And taking care of the wonderful people who have gotten us to this position. If there's bandwidth to be able to do more of that, I like giving back. You know, I'm a big fan of, you know, the go-giver style mentality and helping, you know, others as much as is possible, because there's so many people that have helped me on the journey that, you know, they take a coffee for free, that the advice you get for them is phenomenal. So, yeah, if I can model the masters a little bit more like that and do more of those things, it'd be
I love the go-giver approach. Bob Berg, we've obviously had on the show.
Certainly.
The writer of that book, I highly recommend. If you could do it all again, what would you do differently?
It's a hard one to answer, isn't it? That's where you probably asked that bloody question. If I could do it all again, I don't think I would, because to get to where you're sitting, you have to have gone the path that you went. And if you change any one thing along that journey, there's a lot of movies I think about this sort of that whole sliding doors concept. Yeah. Would you be where you are today? And so at the risk of not being able to be where I am, because I'm the happiest I've ever been, I don't think I would do things differently. If I was able to start my business again, as an example, and I could take the learnings I have now, that'd be cool in theory, but I'm also so grateful for where it is as a result. So I'll take these things forward with the next, you know, decisions that I make around what we're doing with Nuago and in my personal life and those things. But I don't think I would go back and erase anything and put something else over it. There's some stuff I didn't enjoy, some stuff I really did enjoy, but I think they all need to.
Yeah, well, it comes back to your Eric, your guide, one step at a time.
There you go.
What excites you about the future?
Seeing the impact my children have in the world. You know, that's just seeing who they grow up to be. I think is one of the most exciting things about being a parent.
And scariest things.
And terrifying.
Yeah,
my little one, Ayla's just sick last night, and I'm just like that fear of a parent, like, oh, everything immediately. That fear that you get as a parent, that's just crazy. But no, just seeing the beautiful young ladies they're growing up to be already, the different personalities they have, they're certainly different human beings. But just getting to watch them on that journey and trying to do whatever I can to help them, you know, live a positive existence and make an impact on the world in their way.
I can't not ask you this question. But when I ask what excites you about the future, I thought there was going to be an AI thing involved in that. Does the AI excite you or scare you?
Both.
Yeah.
The potential of AI is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I don't fear AI from an existential, Skynet perspective. But no, there's a lot to be considered very quickly in this arena. You know, I'm a huge fan of the Diary of a CEO. And I don't know if I mentioned recently, the Mo Gaudat comes back on to talk about AI and what we need to do about that. There needs to be, well, the way I explain this one, there needs to be a firewall created with human values on it that sits in front of the AI. Because it's just a brilliant computer that's, you know, soon enough going to be 10 times smarter than any human on the planet.
Yeah.
So
but wouldn't that computer be able to figure out how to turn that firewall off?
Oh, potentially, right? So this is going to take people a lot smarter than me get into a room figuring out what are the guardrails, what are the possible permutations, you know, things that we haven't considered as a result that we need to be able to build in to create those guardrails. Because I think it's in the AI dilemma. The guys that did the social dilemma have released another one recently. It's really good. And, you know, it gets you thinking that there is some stuff we need to do very quickly to make sure that we're able to leverage the awesome outcomes that do come with AI. So
Yeah, I often think about, and this might be sound like a really stupid scenario, but like think about a kid that wants to make some scrambled eggs, right? You got to go to the fridge and you got to pull out the eggs, and some kids will pull out the eggs and drop the carton, and the box will smash on the ground. Like that's kind of how I think it's going to go wrong. Like there's going to be some entrepreneurs or really excited tech guys or people who are going to create an AI and accidentally smash the carton of eggs on the ground on the way. Like that's where it goes wrong. I don't necessarily. But then again, there's other countries that might want to have different ideas about it. But I think like that's the bit that scares me the most is that someone who's actually trying to do good makes a mistake that turns bad.
Yeah, I mean, this hasn't come about as a result of somebody trying to use it for nefarious purposes.
Yeah,
but people will use it for
they
that.
will.
And moreover, the unintended consequences. I think they said of the top researchers globally in AI, that 50% or half of them believe there is more than a 10% chance that AI equals the death of humanity.
Yeah.
The top researchers in the world in this field.
More than a 10% chance.
More than a 10% chance. And the analogy they then draw is, say, if you were going to get on a 747 jet and you knew that there was a 10% chance that half of the engineers that are the best aviation experts in the world worked on this jet, said there's a 10% chance or greater that thing's not going to make it to its destination. Would you get on the plane? And I was like, oh, man, that's an interesting perspective.
Does that number take into account all the possible ways in which you can die?
There's so many unknowns,
and that's what I'm saying. That seems quite high for me.
Yeah. Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's way higher than I would accept getting onto a plane if someone said that.
Oh no, I agree. But this is somewhat that I question it.
Yeah. Oh, you need to question it, right?
Yeah.
That's key. But the big thing they say is, look, there's some very, very big and powerful businesses that largely have the control, because AI is an expensive sport, right? And so there's what they're saying is an arms race towards capturing as many eyeballs as we can, right? That's the name of the game,
now.
ultimately. So that, in the absence of the appropriate rules, regulations, guidance, guardrails, whatever you want to call it, put around that, we will lead to not a very good future, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You got to curtail it before it gets to a level where, like you said before, I mean, can it turn off its own values-based firewall? Probably.
I think the number one most accepted way in which the humans will perish is through the hands of other humans, right? Like, I think is the Permidox theory or something like that? I can't remember the exact wording, but it was before we have the ability to expand and become an interplanetary species, we'll find a way to destroy ourselves.
Highly likely.
Yeah, 100%, which is not a great thought.
No, not at
Anyway, let's...
went all dark there.
We did. I'm going to round off now. As you may remember from the first chat, we like to have a little bit of fun on the at the end of the podcast. Just some quick fire questions. We're big readers. I know you're a big reader and learner. What are you reading right now?
I got a couple on the go. So I'm sitting with Traction again.
Oh, yeah.
So Gino Wickman, that's the kind of EOS framework there. Read Rework recently, which was really good, from the founder of Basecamp. That's one of Bezos' most recommended books, and a really easy read. And I thought, distilled down to some really sage wisdom that I would recommend to a lot of aspiring leaders, because it's really just some good core concepts to focus on.
Yep.
That's
it. Beautiful.
A couple. Carol Dweck Mindset, I finished not too long ago.
Oh, Carol Mindset's one of my most recommended books.
Really good book. Made me really look at my parenting style.
Correct. I actually think it's not just a business thing. It's a life thing, isn't it? Really,
for sure.
Your old man is big on the 7 habits, right? And it's I think Stephen Covey's 7 habits. It's fundamental in your business and Nuago, which is great. But outside of that one, what is one self-development book that you feel stands out from the crowd?
Oh, there's a few good ones out there. I was a big fan of James Clear's Atomic Habits.
I am.
I thought that's a book you can pick up and probably read end to end.
Yep. 7
Habits is more one that you got to pick up, put down again.
Read a chapter at a time.
Which is great. And I've gone through 7 Habits numerous times. We teach it to everybody who's willing in our business that wants to go through it, and it's one of the things that Dad loves doing. But yeah, I thought Atomic Habits was a really cool one when it talks about, cue, craving, response, reward, around kind of the way that we're wired to forming habits and habit stacking and that sort of stuff. I found because the books I read, I wanted to be able to be applicable, like I said before, where I'm not business and then home Connor. It's just kind of like I live my life in a certain way. Sometimes I dress a little bit nicer than other times.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I loved Atomic Habits. It's one thing that constantly sits in my head. It's actually one of those books that I loved, and it's completely changed the way I think, yet I don't apply the methodologies. Does that make sense? So you know, when you know something, you know you should eat an apple a day. You know you shouldn't eat that bucket of fries. Like, you know that you shouldn't, but you still do anyway. Yeah. And every time I do something or I skip a day of habit stacking or try to habit stack and I won't do it the next day and I think about it constantly, actually has a point of, like, I get myself down about it sometimes. So it's
I think that's only human, though.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're never going to pick up any book and follow it to the T.
Correct.
It's about like, how do you add it to your kit bag so everybody's unique?
No, I did really like that one as well. What's one lesson that's taken you the longest to learn?
Probably one I'm still learning at the moment that I'm not even aware of. That everyone is correct in what they're saying in their opinion.
Perspective thinking.
Yeah, like where it's legit. And I think that's one of the things I learned when going through neurolinguistics was like kind of the concept of the 5 positions where, you know, I'm talking to you right now, but you're listening to me. Somebody's listening to both of us.
Yeah.
If you go above it and you look at it in the context of the building that we're in, and it just kind of changes your paradigm a little bit, how you look at stuff. And I think then when you come back and sit in your first position, you're like, well, that person's just seeing the world as exactly as they see it. So like in their mind, they're actually not wrong. Even if they're factually incorrect, that's kind of the way that they're.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just kind of given me a bit more of a.
I love it. We use a street corner analogy here.
Yeah, yeah.
You remember this? Have I told you this one?
Bro, there's an accident.
There's an accident in the middle of a street, like a T section, right? You're standing on one corner, I'm standing on the Paula is standing on, and we see there's this car accident that happens in the middle of the street. On one corner, you see the guy or girl, whoever it is, in the car on their phone, not paying attention. I'm on the other corner and I see this little dog run past, which why the car in front slammed on their brakes. And Paula was on the other corner and saw this kid kind of being a little bit apprehensive on his bike, and therefore caused a slide. We all saw the exact same accident. We're all 100% correct but yet we're all different in our thought process. Yeah. So I think that's just a powerful.
Witness testimony is only like 45% accurate or something.
Yeah, like that. Correct. Yeah. And I think so. Just the analogy of everyone sees the same thing, but just from a different perspective, and we just have to take that into consideration, especially when going through cultural change and organizational change in a business and growth and scale. We have to understand the perspectives of those around us.
Yeah, 100%.
These are supposed to be quick fire questions. If you could have a coffee with one current or historical person, who would it be?
Mo got out.
Oh yes. Yeah. Can I come?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. You're totally coming with me. Yeah, he's just a genius.
So for those who don't, Mo, Gawdat.
Spot on.
He was ex-COO of Google, and now he runs Happiness.
So he wrote the Happiness Project.
Happiness Project.
And Solve for Happy with one of his books.
Yeah.
And just an otherworldly human being. When you listen to the guy speak, I aspire to be more like him in the way he carries himself.
100%. And gone through some trauma himself.
Oh, yeah. Huge trauma.
What is some of the best advice that you've ever received?
I've received a lot of good advice from a lot of people, but what's in my control? That probably goes through my head numerous times a day is, something happens, the analogy used before about the kid dropping the eggs. That's your kid, drops on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the eggs are on the ground. What can I do about it?
Yeah.
That or, learn as if you'll live forever, but live as if you'll die tomorrow, I think is a brilliant thing. Actually, shout to my May. It's don't buy green bananas.
Yeah.
I've always loved that. I mentioned that in my wedding speech. You buy green bananas, you're not going to eat them today.
Yeah. Buy
the ones that are ripe now to eat.
Yeah.
And because you're not promised tomorrow, so those, bananas might never get enjoyed.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an element of that I really like to go, well, if there's a thing, I lost a dear friend of mine to cancer a couple of years ago, and he was out visiting me right before the pandemic, and we didn't know he was sick. I had this bottle of wine in my cellar that I was like, oh, I'm going to keep this here forever. And I decided on the last night that he was there to open it up. And we enjoyed it together. And it's a core memory I have now with him. Like, I wouldn't have that if I didn't, buy the bananas I wanted to eat today.
Yeah.
So I really like that analogy.
What's one habit that holds you back?
I don't know. What's a habit that holds me back? One of the things I'm trying to work on at the moment is like my detail focus and accountability and those things. Because I would tend to be quite good with like visionary big picture stuff, but getting down to that. So maybe a habit of a lack of detail.
Is that a thing?
It is to me.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Hyperbole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't stand when people. Oh, it's epic. Was it really epic?
Oh, don't get me
Just
started.
the bastardization of the language.
This must be like, I got Paula sitting here, right, managing this podcast as we speak, and something happened with our business the other day, and I'm one of those people that like I probably speak a little bit of that, so I'm surprised you have. I mean, oh, that's a disaster, right? And like
You're Italian, mate.
Yeah. But disaster for me is something like a word that I've grown up with.
Yeah.
Like everything's a disaster.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I'm going to shut up.
I'm sure I'm triggering my wife right now because I get so literal about things. I'm like, no, literally. That's a word I hate.
Yeah, literally.
Literally?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
I reckon I got that. There's that one word the absolutely hate. You've pre-answered a question. Yeah, literally. Just on the wife thing, right? I shouldn't go down this path, but I'm about to. I'm the same. Like, you never help out. What do you never?
Come
never.
on, Dan, lift your game.
Never. I've never helped. Like in the history of our relationship, I've never helped.
People use like always or never.
Yeah.
And I'm that annoying person that's like never.
Yeah.
Or always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I take literally. If you could pay someone to do your chores, like one chore, what would it be?
It was probably as simple as actually taking my car, my bins down to the street.
Oh, really?
Because I always I'll get home from work late,
long...
kids, dinner and stuff like that. And then like, it'll be just bucketing rain. And I'm like, I've just sat down and get comfy and just hang out with the wife. Kids are in bed. I'm like, I got to go outside and it's cold and put my jacket. So it's something minor, but I enjoy most of
Have you got a long driveway?
Not super long, but long enough that I get annoyed, Daniel.
It's a first world problem, isn't it? I love this question. What is one thing that you would do if you became invisible?
Oh, I would just love messing with everybody I love. I'm a big prankster and I'm always messing with people. So I just feel like I'd have so much fun cruising around, just absolutely screwing with people for probably way longer than is appropriate.
Yeah.
That's probably what I would do.
What's one useless talent that you have?
One useless. I mean, probably juggling. I don't know if it's useful.
Oh, you're a good juggler.
I wouldn't say I'm.
I always thought you were a bit of a clown.
Yeah, there you go. No, so I mean, I can juggle, but I can't tell you the last time I did it. Or it's not like really something you're like, oh, wait, I know. Juggling will solve this problem. Yeah. So, probably more just end up bruising some fruit because I juggle the wrong things that are perishable or something.
Oh, shit. All right. My favorite question of this whole podcast. What's your best dad joke?
So, what's the tallest building in Adelaide?
What's the tallest building? It's Westpac building. Is it? No, it's the RAA building now. Is that it?
Hold on, what do you reckon? No, it's the library. It's got the most stories.
Oh.
So shout out to Ben Gordon Edwards from My Business. He always comes by and tells me new jokes every day, and that was one of his.
That's horrible.
I never remember jokes, but we're gonna go with that one.
Yeah,
and it works in every city. You know,
it does.
It's location proof.
Yeah. No, you did well. I like the way you spun that then. Brilliant. Dad jokes are supposed to be shit. So.
And they got to be on the spot, spur of the moment, good fun stuff. So.
I saw on that. I saw a TikTok or something yesterday, which was kids. It was a 3-minute clip or 2-minute clip, like with the traumatic music of kids talking about their dads and their dad jokes and going.
It's the moment it happens. The amount of buddies I've had that are like, "Hey, I'm going to be a dad now," and their humor just turns horrible, but you appreciate it as
there's a point in life.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much, mate, for agreeing to come back on the show. Congratulations again for all your success in business, in life, and the recent awards in Daily 40 Under 40s. So kudos. You're having an impact on, I know, the people who work in your team. So I know that they would agree with me when I say this, that you're having a profound impact on themselves as human beings and in their lives. And Nuago are doing some amazing things with businesses, especially here in South Australia, or particularly here in South Australia. So thank you for all that you're doing for the community. Where can we find you, and where can we be in touch?
Firstly, I mean, man, you're far too kind, and what a pleasure to come on and have a chat with you. And congrats on all your success with this wonderful business and podcast that you've built. And sharing the stage was an honor with you in that award recently. I've really enjoyed learning from your podcast and learning from the people that come on here and from yourself as well. So can't thank you enough, and the congratulations in your direction as well.
Thank you.
Where to find me? I'm a loud yank. I'm not too hard to find. No, so usually, I mean, LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me. I don't have socials from a personal perspective, but LinkedIn or via inquiries on our website, you can find me.
Beautiful. Excellent. Thank you very much, mate. We'll catch you soon. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Thanks for listening to the podcast all. You can check out the show notes if there was anything of interest to you, and find out more about us at SynergyIQ.com.au. I am going to ask, though, if you did like the podcast, it would absolutely mean the world to me if you could subscribe, rate, and review. And if you didn't like it, that's all right too. There's no need to do anything. Take care, guys. All the best.